Thanks for joining me. I'm going to be talking today about how you change the governance model of an established open source project. For those of you who haven't had the chance to come and chat to us on the stand today, OpenUK is an open source marketing automation project. Come and talk to me at the beers about what that means if you want to know more. And my role, I'm the project lead for OpenUK, and I'm also co-founder with the lovely Lorna of the Women of Open Source community. So I will pop these slides up on my website afterwards, and I think they'll be on Shed as well. And you can zap that to connect with me on LinkedIn, or just catch me later. So, governance. So there wasn't really a governance in open source definition that was easily accessible. So for me, what it comes down to, it can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. It can be just 2 lines on a piece of paper or a really big document. But ultimately, it's a blueprint for the power structures in your community, how the decision-making works, how people interact in the community. Ultimately, we're looking at how we steer human collaboration and software evolution within your projects. So a very brief history of OpenUK's governance. We were founded in 2014, and in 2016, the founder also created a SaaS company to provide the software in an enterprise setting. In 2018, we had our first community release by someone who was not an employee of the SaaS company. 2019, the SaaS company was acquired, and through that acquisition, the brand, the trademarks, and everything to do with the community was also acquired. So in 2020, we actually created a governance model which would clarify the relationship between the company and the community and how all of that would shake out. And this is what it looked like. The important bits are these pale blue dudes and dudettes up here are company. They have to be from the company. The dark ones have to be from the community. And then these grey ones could be either. So it could be someone who's community or could be someone who's who is company representatives. So this was created in collaboration with the community, but was very much driven by the company because they wanted to have ownership of the community and the project, but also to steer it. So it was a very positive relationship. They really wanted to support and steer and grow the community. In April, we were facing times of change, so the company wasn't able to continue supporting the open source project in the same way it was. One of those ways was employing a project lead, which was me at the time. So we had to find a way to continue going forwards with the project, not being dependent on that one company. So that's what I mean by being a corporate-backed project, is that you're dependent on one company. That's how I'm explaining it. So yeah, times have changed. The first thing we had to decide was the fiscal structure, because we were no longer going to be supported by one project. And there were several opportunities out there. So how we made that decision, first of all, involved, I was the only person who knew that this support was going to be withdrawn at this point. So I wanted to go away and research what the heck could we do? Like, what are the options? What do we actually need as a project to continue functioning if we don't have that company providing the support they do currently? So lots of Googling, lots of phone calls, lots of snagging stuff from open source projects. One option was joining a foundation or an umbrella organization, but one of the things that I felt was very important was that we were still able to be autonomous and make our own decisions, use our own toolings, use the things that we know work for us. And that wasn't always the case in some of the organizations that I was researching. We could stay with Open Source Collective, who were our current fiscal host, but we only used them to manage money. They also allow you to employ maintainers through remote.com through Open Source Collective. They also manage your assets and brand and trademark and domain names, and they can also provide legal support. So those were 3 key areas that the company was providing that we needed to kind of fill the gaps in. So that was a strong contender as well. And the other option was actually creating our own non-profit. So starting 501 something, or a CIC in the UK, or the funny word in Holland, I can't remember what it is. That was an option as well. However, every single person I spoke to who's been through this process said, do not start a non-profit. Whatever you do, don't do anything else but that. Like, it has to be your last resort. And after I'd heard it about 5 times, I was like, okay, right, I get the message. But what I did was actually took that information to our community members of the council, told them what was happening, told them that I'd done some research. These were the things these were the proposals, these were the things I think we should consider. Some of the useful resources, and these are all, will all be on my website. I also did this at FOSDEM, so it's on the FOSDEM website as well. Governing Open is a great place to start if you're looking for resources on open source governance and if you have no clue what the heck it is. It's got some really great resources. The PEP 8002 is amazing. It's a very, very thorough review of governance models and changes of several open source projects. And although they weren't the same as us, they were going through similar difficulties. So it was also like, do not do this under any circumstances because it's gone wrong. So that was really helpful. And I really appreciate it when open source projects are so open and transparent about the parts of their governance that is actually pretty rubbish and doesn't work, because then you can make sure you don't do it. Don't just copy it. FOSS governance, if you need any governance document as a template, that's the place to go. It's an amazing resource, and I'm going to upload our model there. And also, don't underestimate your network. I put out some feelers confidentially to several people, explain what was happening. Not only did they give me moral support, but they also, said don't start a non-profit, and gave me ideas, gave me inspiration, helped bounce off ideas to say, this is what I'm thinking, how do you feel? That was just so helpful, emotionally, morally, but also practically. So then we shared it with the wider council and the wider leadership team. We talked about the options that I'd researched and what was going to be best, what we wanted for Mautic, and how was that actually going to work with those three options. And then the fun thing in open source. How do you come to a consensus? Generally, people were actually willing to trust that what I felt was the right thing, but we also had some points where there were discussions about actually, what about this, what about that? Some options we had on the table would have given us short-term stability, would have given us financial stability, but we were fearful that they would also result in a loss of control and autonomy, and we're having to make decisions with other things in mind other than what's right for our project. And ultimately, we kind of decided that wasn't really the way we wanted to go. So the next step was, once we'd reached a consensus, which did take a little while, but it was very positive, was sharing the news. So this was a day where I literally was like, press the button, hope to God everyone agrees with the decision we've made. You know, I really felt like people were going to be positive about the decision to become an independent open source project and go with Open Source Collective. But I was also quite fearful that there might be some backlash of people saying, why didn't you X, Y, Z? Actually, that didn't happen. There were a few people who were concerned for the project, but there wasn't massive outcry. So lessons learned. Language really matters. When we had this draft ready, we brought in people we trusted from our international communities under, trust to say, this is happening. We know this is so new to you, but we really need to translate this document. So we had like 5 or 6 Google Docs of different languages. And also, once it was announced, other communities came up and translated it for us as well. And people really valued that we'd taken the effort to do that, to help them understand what this meant. Also, it can be very emotive for you as a maintainer, but also for the people who are hearing this news. We had people who were like, I really don't give a shit. Just, I want the product, I don't care. We had people who were really, really positive. We had people who were really negative in the process of redetermining our governance model. So you kind of have to be ready for all of that, which can be a lot to hold. And then being available. So we had webinars with translators for each of our communities, where people had like 20-minute presentation of what was changing and an opportunity to ask questions back and forth. That was really well received. I had open door office hours where people could just drop into a Zoom call and chat with me, talk about our cats, talk about governance, whatever. And they valued the fact that there was that opportunity. Even if they didn't use it, there was the opportunity to ask questions. So we then had to go into, what the heck does our governance model look like? We've got to yoink out the company. We want to do this democratically instead of, this is what it's going to look like. This was fun. So first of all, someone said, I don't think we need any hierarchy. I was a bit of an anarchist. He was like, we don't need hierarchy. So we had the first conversation of, do we actually need structure? Does an open source project need structure? We actually decided, yes, we did. We couldn't find any successful open source project of scale that had a flat structure. all of them have some kind of council, committee, governance, something. So we kind of said, great idea, but we don't think so. So we want structure. Well, what structure do we want? I was really keen we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because some of the structures we had, our teams and our working groups, were actually working all right, and we didn't necessarily need to change them. There was no corporate involvement at that level. The council, however, was not democratically elected. They were basically, in the governance model, they were chosen by the project lead. In reality, whoever stepped up got in, basically. You know, because like, as is often the case. And so we actually wanted the council to be democratically elected. We didn't have a level between the council and the teams. So we didn't have that level in the middle of where the community could actually be involved in decision making, and then that decision making is voted on, and then the council enacts the decisions of the members. So we didn't have that. So that came from inspiration from Decidim, who have a General Assembly. I've got 4 minutes left, so this is like super fast. I'm sorry. You'll be on, you know, so full up by the time we go to the beers. So we also were worrying, like, if we nominate everyone and elect them all at once, how the heck are we going to make sure they don't all leave at once? So this was inspiration from the Python Software Foundation. We had an election, and we said the top 3 people who get the top 3 number of votes get 3 years, the next 2 get 2 years, the next 2 get 1 year. We had, as it's Sod's law, 2 people here, exactly the same number of votes, right on the border. I mean, like, oh. But what we did is just had a conversation and said, look, who wants to do 3, who wants to do 2? And actually, Eki has already been a team lead for ages, so he's like, it's fine, I'll do 2 years. So we just came to an agreement on those. But it actually worked really well, and the community appreciated that. And then this was the thorny subject, who manages me? Because I used to be employed by a company and had a manager, and now the community are employing me, and like nobody manages me. So what we decided was a bit like in a charity where you would have a board and the chief exec would be responsible to the board. That's what we wanted to have for the council. We haven't quite fully set it all up yet, but effectively that's what the governance model now says, that the council hires and fires the project lead. So we'll see. And then we had to decide on how to decide. Really fun. How do you do voting? Like, you need a system that is reliable, that allows people to vote. That means you can easily spin up voting for anything, because we wanted it to be like democratic by default. Lots of research, lots of different tools. We ended up going with Decidim, which is an open source platform for government organizations. So the city of Barcelona use it for interacting with their local population. We repurposed it for interacting with our community. So it means we can spin up votes on anything. People can submit proposals, people can run meetings and have transparent notes using Etherpad, and it's pretty awesome, basically. But then people were saying, so who can vote? Who has a say? Anyone? Everyone? And we decided that you had to be either have money in the game, so you become an individual member at $100 a year, or you use the Big Mac index to reduce that down based on the comparative price between the US and your country where you register for tax. It's by The Economist. You can find it on GitHub. Contribution-based, so we need to see 5 hours of activity every month for 3 months for you to be eligible for a contribution-based membership. Corporate membership, which is from $1,200 a year to $30,000 a year. And honorary membership, which is for people who've made exceptional contributions to the project. Most of those are still paying members. And most of the contribution people who could be eligible are paying members. But we've got those options there if we want them. And then people started saying, but I contribute more than they do. I want more of a say. Here be dragons. This gets very complicated very, very quickly, and it's very open to exploitation. So we decided one member, one vote. So one human member, one vote. One organization member, one vote. Simple. Kept it simple. It was easy to implement with Decidim. Some people didn't like it. Well, they don't have to implement it. So, and then how do decisions get made? So we'd never really defined the time boxes that you use for decision making. What we decided, so many decides, was trivial decisions like what background should we use on a conference event recording. We don't need red tape. Decide it. doesn't need to be debated. If they're non-trivial, like who should we invite as a speaker, or a code situation where there's a few different avenues you could explore, but they're reversible and they don't have major impact, with those ones, 36-hour time box before you make a decision. And significant decisions that impact several teams or the whole project, or have a financial impact, or they're not easy to reverse without consequences, they require at least 2 weeks for a decision to be made. So we have those definitions, and we default to consensus, lazy consensus being the main one. So if nobody contests a decision, you make it after that time box elapses. And how we actually got to the final version, we summarized everything as it was happening in a Google Doc, because when you go into Slack and there's 250 conversations happening since the last time you looked, I couldn't even cope up. So we just use a Google Doc. It was like a running summary. When we got to a point where we had a model, I put it on the forum and chunked each section into its own forum thread. So people could then go and discuss just that section in that thread, and then based on the feedback, we updated the initial post in that thread, and then brought them all together in a final governance model. The plus of this is that our users are marketers, and so they're often on the forums when they've got a problem. So we actually got a lot more drive-by traffic and interest in the governance from people who would not normally care about governance. And that was good and bad. So, you had to be a bit patient with some people. So lessons learned. Long live the time box. Time box all the things is the best advice Angie Webchick ever gave me. Delegate research. If someone really cares about something, get them to do the research on that subject. Bring it back as like a précis, and then make a decision. And keep it simple. I'm the queen of complexity, and I am so bad at making things really complicated. So we quite often were saying, what do we actually want from this, and what crap can we get out of the way so we can make it more simple? Go where they are. So we had Slack, we had forums, we had discussions on social media, email sessions at conference. We literally went everywhere our users were to try and socialize this. Code of conduct is very, very important in these situations. We actually had to exclude someone because they were repeatedly offending, and they had a history of offending, but they completely exploded in this situation. It's really important that this is a safe space for people to actually air their views, their concerns, and what have you respectfully. And I found the most useful thing to do for me was to say, like, I'm about 6 out of 10 about this thing staying because X, Y, Z. Or like, I'm 2 out of 10, I kind of like it, but it's not really vital. So it's fine if we don't go with it. Let's have a discussion. Because then it gives other people the language to do the same. And then, draft fast and iterate often. It has to come out of this nebulous discussion into an actual document. Do that early, be prepared to chuck it away because things will change fast, but get it down on paper. Otherwise, it will just be a never-ending discussion, which is not helpful for anyone. So where we're at now, this is the timeline for the becoming an independent open source project. We now have all the brand ownership, trademarks, everything over in Open Source Collective. We've had the first draft shared. We've actually voted on that. The council has accepted it. We launched our membership model in August. In October, we launched a community portal after about a month of beta testing. And then on the 19th of December, we had our first EGM of the General Assembly, so all the members who had become a member, to formally inaugurate the council and to also formally adopt the governance model going forwards. So we're kind of there. We're just about there. We've got about 150 people, 155, more like probably 160 now on the portal. About 44 people or companies regularly contributing, and 14 through practical contributions. And we had a really successful voting process on the portal. We also held all of our team meetings, working group meetings, everything on the portal so that it's in one central place. So that is a whistle-stop tour. I'm sorry it has run over ever so slightly by a couple of minutes, keeping you from your beer. But if you have any questions, I might be allowed 1 or 2, or you can catch me afterwards.